Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, this is Tony Day. Today what we're going to do is look at creating a fake Arri Lut, and we are going to do this by using the newest version of DaVinci Resolve, which is Resolve 16. This is the one you need to use in order to do this, because it allows you to actually create a LUT with some of the things that I normally do to do this kind of technique for grading. Also, I'll show you how to create a reference LUT for if you shoot one stop over like I usually do. This is the shot we're going to use. It's basically the same thing, slightly different. I turned my body, but I can show you how you can use a reference LUT if you go one stop over, okay? So let's just start right away looking at this shot. What I want to show you is how I exposed that first shot so you can have a benchmark on how you can do your own. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. This is something I had to put together quickly because the one that I do have, you know, the person in the shot is not releasing their face to be used in a YouTube video, so I can't use it. Here I just put something together as quick as I could for this kind of video to serve its purpose. And what I did, which is really important, is have a face. Better if you have light skin and dark skin. I have lighter skin, but light skin and dark skin is better in these kinds of tests so that you can see how the LUT you're going to create responds to both. The other thing is to have something that's blown out. This, I just used a wall with a light. Also have something that's in the shadows so that you can see how the darks are handled as well. If you don't have at least these three things, that's already going to be a problem for your LUT because the contrast is like, it's like shooting in the dark. It's also good to have colors. Here I just use a clapboard because it serves its purpose. I haven't needed a color chart for a really long time, so this usually does all that I needed to do and does its job. I also have gray cards, so in reality I just haven't needed color charts because the stuff I do is just not necessary to be that accurate. The more information you have on the screen, the better, and the less kind of janky the setup is, the better it's going to be. In this case, this is going to serve the purpose for what we're doing. In this shot, use a Sigma 18-35 at f1.7. This is with a Metabone speed booster as well. This is at 5600 Kelvin, and I'll just turn on the LUT here, and this is essentially transforming into Arri Log C and Arri Color Space, and then using the Arri Rec 709 LUT on the end. Okay, so that's what this is doing. If we go to the next shot, this is one stop over. And if I turn on the LUT that we designed for this one, or that I designed for this one, you can see that it's basically the same thing. If I go back and forth, obviously this is a little bit more blown out, but that's what happens when you go one stop over, right? I'll show you later how this shadow area gets affected and why I like to use it. But let's first start with the first shot, okay? I have 4 nodes. I have a color space transform Arri, I have a white balance, I have an adjustment node, and I have an Arri LUT node on the end. So the first thing we're going to do here is throw in the color space transform node. We're going to choose for input color space Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and then Blackmagic Pocket 4K Film Gen 4. This is the input color space and input gamma that you put on the front. Depending on your camera, obviously if you're using this technique for a different camera, you're going to pick different ones here, but the bottom 2 should be what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to choose Arri Alexa, and I'm going to choose Arri Log C for the color space and output gamma. Last thing I'm going to do here with tone map method is choose luminance mapping. Okay, and you know, obviously we have blown out this area intentionally over here to see how it handles these blown out spots. So depending on how you like to do this, you might mess about with any of this, but I just leave it like it is. We're also going to go to Gamut Mapping and go to Saturation Mapping. And this is to limit, and I've shown this before, but it's to limit how red and cyan and blue, they kind of get blown out a bit with a Pocket 4K color science. So when we put this here, we kind of keep that oversaturation from getting oversaturated, I guess, with lack of better words for it. So next thing we're going to do is jump to the last node here, and we're going to throw in the Arri Alexa to Rec 709 LUT. Now this is, if I remember correctly, it's a 1D LUT, so you can't just throw this right into a camera that needs 3D LUTs. So that this is why we need to kind of do these extra steps, and also it's better to use LUTs with the color space and the gamma that it's supposed to be using, right? So that's why we're doing this color space transform node in the beginning. Okay, so now we are pretty much done with most of what we're going to do with this. I mean, this is the big part here, is the color space transform node and the Arri Lut. What I like to do is do a white balance. Now I'm going to do it really fast here. You can spend forever doing this to get it the perfect white balance for you if you want, but I always find the image to be a little brown or a little too warm on the Pocket 4K, regardless of how I use it. So I'm just going to quick and easy grab the medicine dropper, go onto white, do that, and now we can see that, at least in my opinion, if we turn this on and off, it looks a bit more natural. It looks less brown. I'm gonna say this, I don't know what the heck is going on with Resolve 16, but this flashing, I don't know if you'll see it during this, this flashing is just unreasonable. I do not know why it does that now. I'm gonna have to play with it. This is kind of why I'm a little late on this video. I wanted to do it earlier, but Resolve is just being a jerk. Anyway, so to me, this white balance is also really important for me when I'm looking at it on a reference, because I really hate that whenever I use the Blackmagic design LUT, it's like brown. Like, it doesn't matter what I do, everything looks brown. So this kind of helps with make it look a little bit more natural. Now, if you want, you can add more nodes to fix, you know, if you want to neutralize blacks, or you want to, you know, go and mess about with more of the colors, you can do that. I'm not going to do that because it just takes a long time, and I'm not always going to be in this situation using this room. So I'm just going to kind of make this as like a general fake Arri Lut, if that makes sense. So the next node here is going to be an adjustment node. The reason why I have this here is because, I mean, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you want to leave everything kind of like this, like, you can do that. My thing about leaving everything lifted is that if I'm trying to look at how I want my image to look at the end, this is usually not what I like. The darks are just way too high for me. So what I like to do is kind of crush them down a bit. And I know for some people, they like, you know, lifted blacks and like kind of a milky look sometimes. I don't like that. So I'm just gonna bring these down. And you'll notice like the flickering, I do not know what the heck is going on, so I'm gonna have to look at if there's some new thing going on where maybe my graphics card is being an idiot or something, but this is just unreasonable. I do not know why it does that. So anyway, so here's just a little bit of extra contrast, and then I'll just pull the shadow down, let's say to there. So God, it makes it hard to A/B when it's doing that. So this is more like what I would probably, jeez. So this is more like what I would prefer with how I'd look at it in the monitor, because I'd be like, okay, these on my normal grade, they're probably going to be pushed down a bit more. You know, these middle areas are going to be lifted up a little bit more, and this is more of what I would like, and a lot less of this. So, you know, do whatever you want in your adjustments. If you want to make, you know, a teal and orange look, or whatever you want to do, make those adjustments and then throw this on the end. Some people do adjustments after that. You can do that. I'm not going to do it, okay? So after this, all that really is required is for you to save this out. It's really easy to do that. You just go make sure you have these clips visible. If you don't have them visible up here, you can toggle them on and off. So you'll have them down here, whichever one you want, you right click it, go generate 3D Lut Cube, and then choose where you want to save it, and then name it whatever you want. I've already done this. I called this Faux Arri, or however you want to call it, fake Arri Lut, and I put +0 on it because I'm going to create a +1 overexposure lookup table as well, because I like to use that as a reference, okay? So let's show you that, okay? I also want to show you how we expose the two different shots so that you have kind of an idea of what it will look like with false color turned on for both shots. This is, you know, the normal exposure that we just did. And I used a 180 degree shutter angle. For some reason, when I took this shot, this stayed at 360. I wish it would actually show you what you shot it at. But anyway, this was at 180 and I just changed the shutter angle to 360 for the next shot. And you can see how very different the exposure is. Obviously this area is going to be quite a bit more blown out. Also the faces in the gray and then also in the pink. So this, you know, contrary to how a lot of people shoot, I don't shoot this way when I can. And the reason is because this area will have more noise if I shoot it this way. Now for most people, they're not going to care. But because of how I have had work kicked back in the past for noise and having to do denoising and all that kind of stuff, the less noise I have, in my opinion, the better, so I don't worry about that. So I tend to do this where I can. When I do it this way, this is not exposed to the right. This is just overexposing, okay? It's different. You can consistently expose, you know, just one stop over, or if you really want to, two stops over, which I don't tend to do. It's more like one stop for me personally. And when I do it this way, it helps to keep the shadows cleaner, because in general, this is the area that people will complain about if there's too much noise. And I can actually retain pretty much all of the other information that's necessary for the shot. The only issue that you're going to have when you do this is obviously the highlights might get more blown out, but again, I said I do this where I can, which is most of the time. If you use either of these techniques, either, you know, exposing correctly, I'm doing that in, you know, you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, versus, you know, going one stop over, you should do it consistently for a segment. If you're doing like a movie and you keep changing your exposure, like you shouldn't expose to the right as far as you can for every single shot, because depending on what's in the shot, you're going to be overexposed, and you're going to be less exposed for the next shot, and then even further exposed. The important thing is that if it's all consistent, then it should be easy to grade, right? And that's the point that I make with doing this. I expose a little bit over, which is just one stop, so that it's cleaner overall, and there's no real impact on anything else that's in the negative. Not really. The only area that there's a problem is, of course, the highlights, but sometimes they don't matter. In fact, most of the time, something like this, I won't even care about. You know, if it's a detail in the shot, sure, but in this case, not really. So, enough of this. Let's go on. Here is the first shot that we did, and here is my one-stop overexposed LUT that I threw in. So, here's a one-stop overexposed, here's the LUT, and what you'll notice going back and forth in between the two is that there's not a huge difference as far as the skin tones and the colors and all that kind of stuff. I mean, so here, if we go back and forth between the two shots, if you can spot like a major difference between the skin tones and the color here, for example, dude, you have like incredible eyes, because I can't see it, okay? And I've been doing this for a while, so you'd think I would be able to see it, and I'm telling you, for anybody who is saying that if you overexpose by a stop, then the skin tones look bad, and like, you know, if you're trying to just have clean shadows and everything else looks terrible, it's just not true, okay? Like, when someone says that, you should really, you know, test it out yourself and see if it's true, because, you know, frankly, except for DaVinci Resolve being stupid, you can't see any major difference in any of this, okay? So one stop over, my opinion, great for doing interviews. The only issue obviously is blown out areas like this, and I think I said that, where, you know, obviously if you're overexposing here and you have something being blown out already, then it's going to be even more blown out. Let me show you why I do this so that you understand why I think that this LUT is helpful. Okay, so what I've done is I took the grade from that first one and I threw it onto the second shot that was overexposed. With this same technique here, if I go down into my raw tab and I hit -1, I mean, can you see any major difference between these two as far as the colors any of that? Like, you can't, right? So if you're going to use this technique on a shot that's one stop overexposed, it's going to look nice. I mean, there's not going to be really any obvious difference between them other than one's going to be obviously cleaner. Now, how do I know that? Well, let me show you. Here I've taken this node here, and all I did was lift the darks up. So here's our normal exposure, okay? And this is on the fabric that's basically telling us what our shadows look like. And you can see, I'm gonna zoom way in. You know, obviously no one's gonna zoom at 400%, right? But this is just for YouTube's sake. See all that noise? Okay. Now let's go to the one stop overexposed. Look how much nicer that looks, okay? Very grainy, obvious color noise, very purple, right? And then here it looks so much better. Okay, so in the raw tab, this is the one stop overexposed shot. We're gonna make that exposure go back to 0. And we are going to use a node here to adjust the exposure before the color space transform node, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take off the colors because it's easier to do it this way, in my opinion. We're going to go back and forth between these and look at our waveform monitor, and we're going to try to match these in the nodes here. If we do it in the, I mean, it would be nice if this could be copied over, but it doesn't copy over when you do when you save out a LUT, okay? So we're going to go 0 here in the adjustment. We're going to go to the primaries bar, and we're going to use offset to pull this down. Again, I don't know what is going on with DaVinci Resolve with it flashing like that, but it's really annoying. So anyway, we're just going to, like I said, try to get this to look similar. Okay, so if we go back and forth between these two, within very little time, we've already been able to get the picture to look really, really close. Look in the scopes down here at the waveform monitor. We'll go back and forth. They're not exactly the same, and you can spend more time if you want to get them to look closer. But this is what I call good enough. It's good enough for me, because if I'm going to use the one-stop overexposure LUT or the normal LUT, I'm going to be using that for an entire sequence. Okay, so matching those should be simple. But basically we're done at this point. All that we need to do now is save out like we did before. So we'll get these clips visible, right click, generate 3D LUT, and we'll call it fake Arri underscore Lut underscore +1. So this will, when we load it into our camera, we'll list them appropriately. It'll go from +0, +1, and if you do a +2, you can do that as well. I'm not going to do that for this one. I think you get the idea. So the next thing that we're going to do is make sure that the LUTs saved out and that they work the way that we want them to. If you don't know how to get them to appear in here, what you can do is go into Project Settings, go to Color Management, open LUT folder. So what that does is it opens up the folder that has the lookup tables. You just save them. You know, make a folder in here if you want. Here I did day LUTs. I went in here and I threw, you know, whatever LUTs I would create, I just put them in here. So here's the fake Arri Lut +0 and fake Arri Lut +1. And then just hit update lists. And so that updated our lists. I'll hit save. So we've got our LUTs in here, and this is the regular exposure LUT, so I'll do +0. And we've got our LUT. There it is, okay? And it works. So we can also, for here, use the same LUT, this fake Arri Lut. We throw it in, see how it's overexposed? Like, that's over what we want it to look like. So we just go -1 in exposure and it works, okay? And you just use this like any other LUT, you know, add serial before, you can lift things, you can pull stuff down. I mean, you can do whatever you want with this, just like any normal LUT. If you want to be ultra lazy on your +1 overexposure, you can throw the +1 LUT in, okay? But like I said, I use these mainly as reference LUTs, and I'll only really throw these in or bake it in if I need to do something really quickly, which usually it's, you know, the few little steps that I showed you before is not that hard. But yeah, I mean, this is what I do. If you need to know how to install the LUTs into the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, there's notes on that, and there's other videos that are available. So let me know if you need to know how to do that, because it should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, I mean, here's the 2 shots. Not really, you know, that hard. But yeah, there it is. I hope that you learned something from this and you're able to use this to help out whatever projects you're working on. So catch y'all later.